Okay, well, hello everyone. Welcome to this session, the title of which is Conversational Commerce, a Two-Way Street. This session is brought to you by the Mobile Ecosystem Forum, which is a global trade body based in London, which brings together the mobile business with representatives from finance, from commerce, and from other verticals. My name's Tim Green, I'm the features editor of the MEF, and I'll be moderating today's session. Now, the MEF runs various programs. It's very interested in the future of messaging, and from a brand point of view, messaging is changing quite profoundly. Historically, it's been used for promotional alerts and one-time passwords and notifications, and it still is, of course, but big changes are coming, mostly because of the advent of new rich media channels such as Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp and iMessage and RCS. So there's a lot more coming, a lot of possibilities. And so I've got three experts with me to dig into these, and we're going to have three presentations and then a panel session. So to kick us off, I'm pleased to welcome Paul Louden, who's the Regional Director for the UK and Ireland of Sinch.
So good afternoon. Quick introduction to us at Sinch. For those people who don't know, we're a software as a service platform that really allows clients to engage their clients, their prospects, their partners and their staff with sort of compelling and rich content right down to their mobile device globally. A couple of customers, the customer base is quite varied. So we deal with big multinational companies, local companies. We sell direct, we sell through application service providers. In the US, we deal with probably 8 out of the 10 big tech companies. In the UK, companies such as Boots and Shell, Nationwide and Virgin Media. And just to give you an idea of the scale of what we do as a business, we deliver about 25 billion transactions a year in an industry that is relatively niche as it stands now. So big question is really, has anybody really asked consumers what they want? Well, certainly one company has, Facebook's. One of the stats I pulled out of Facebook is they say that customers are over 50% more likely to buy a product if they've engaged with a brand in terms of messaging. So it's just a nice, interesting stat, just to give you an insight into what some of the technology companies are saying around mobile messaging, if we can believe what Facebook are telling us. So let's have a look at our survey. So our survey really consisted of 2,300 people. We looked at a different level of demographics, both geographical demographics, plus age demographics. And I suppose the key questions that we were really trying to ask is how do the consumers feel about the current state of how they engage with mobile messaging, but as importantly, what do they want us in terms of a desired state? And then the second thing we looked at is their attitude to things like privacy, bots, so really getting an insight into how they feel about the engagement around that. So let's see what they said. So I suppose the first thing that we heard was 71% of consumers say that they often silence notifications. So why do they do that? Well, there's a number of reasons why they do that. It could be because they downloaded an application that they don't use very often. It could be that application is really pushing them too many notifications, or that application might be trying to sell them something. It could be a number of reasons, but I think certainly when I reflect on the number of 71%, I think that probably number is too big for us to ignore. So it makes me think around applications, is there a level of fatigue coming around applications in general? And I know when I look at my mobile phone, you know, the it's quite precious real estate on my mobile phone. So, my favorites, be that the weather app or Facebook or Instagram or sport or news, has a privileged position on my mobile phone. And then I would suggest there are the others in that. So when you look at it, some of the stats that came out of the survey, 51% of smart users say that they downloaded 0 apps in the last month. 0 apps. And out of the ones that have been downloaded, 77% of those users are within 3 days are not using it. And then 5%, really, only 5% are really using those apps after the period. Incredible, really, when you think about the evolution of apps and how much money has been invested in developing those apps. And then we look at anti-spam and we look at noise avoidance and wondering now, is this the new norm? We've certainly seen an increase in ad blockers recently. We've seen a significant amount of apps delivering a premium service to allow their consumers to avoid advertising. And there were some stats that I saw recently from an agency, an insight from a company called Statistica, that said by 2021 there'll be 350 billion emails being generated by us as consumers every day. And even today, they're saying that the average worker is receiving over 140 emails per day. So if those stats are to be believed, no wonder 40% of Generation X and Y are looking at a separate way of filtering out their email, and 2 in 5, have significantly amount of unread emails on their device. And then if we look at consumers' desire to manage their personal data, again the stats are quite alarming in terms of 3 out of 4 of the people surveyed had concerns about the apps tracking their movements, and over 50% were not downloading apps because they didn't trust them. Incredible when you think about it, and again put it in the perspective of the behaviour that you and I are doing as individuals and consumers. And I think the biggest challenge is really the new generation, the Y and the Z generation of people, because they are significantly more wary than maybe the older generation. And I suppose it's not helped by high profile cases like the Cambridge Analytics one, which probably just reinforces that story. But it's not all doom and gloom. So let's see what they said positively around the engagement. So one of the things that came out loud and clear was the desire from the consumers for simplicity. And if you look on the market, there's a massive amount of messaging apps out there. But one thing that came out loud and clear was just because there's a lot of platforms doesn't mean that everybody wants to enable them and use them. In fact, 80% of the people that were surveyed said that it would be extremely or moderately useful to really be transacting through one application. And being an old telco guy, I quite like the fact that even the simplicity of SMS is still being recognized as a brand in the world of other platforms being used. And then I suppose, where is the opportunity within the market? And one of the things we did within the survey was not only look at how people were using applications now, but how they would like to do it. And I suppose some examples here of many user cases, some very vertical specific, but some more pervasive across all industries. But one of the things that comes out loud and clear in a number of these applications is there is a significant bigger desire for consumers, for companies to engage more in these areas, be it service appointments, be it healthcare reminders, whatever. But this is where consumers are saying they believe the opportunity is for us to use these platforms more pervasively. And everyone loves a mobile app. We all do it. Facebook, WhatsApp still dominate the landscape. But I suppose let's not ignore the other platforms. Certainly if you look at geographical and age demographics, a lot of those new platforms are really gaining some traction, certainly in some of the newer markets. So really it is currently, it's very dominated by two players, but as it goes through, then there are significant new platforms coming on board. So lastly, just what are the conclusions that we took out of the survey? I suppose if I try and summarize them down into 4 areas, is that prioritizing value. So service messages through these platforms are very welcome, but so is marketing content, as long as it is highly personalized, very bespoke, and delivered in a timely fashion. Companies really need to invest in building trust with their consumers. Now, it is, it's not rocket science to say that those companies that really invest in building the trust have significantly more engagement than those companies that don't. We've talked about exploring unmet needs. There are a number of really key user cases already out there where people are using this technology very effectively. And then we have consumers saying that they would like them to use it more. So the opportunity out there is certainly tangible and real. And lastly, I would say around consumer privacy, this can't be an afterthought. This really has to be front and center of what we do. And then I'd just like to pause and close just on this slide. I suppose when I look at the picture in this slide, one of the things that came out loud and clear from the survey is 40% of the people surveyed had more than 50 unread emails on their mobile device. And 10%, so 230, had more than 1,000 unread emails on their mobile device. So just, I suppose in closing, it just makes me wonder and ask the question, certainly in a forum like this, whether messaging can potentially be the new wave of marketing innovation. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much for that overview. Next up, I'd like to welcome Alan Ranger. He's the VP of Market Development at LivePerson. He's going to dig in a little bit more to the whole area of bots and conversational commerce.
Lovely. Can we use this one? Yep, great. I'm a little bit tall for this. And I've actually got 34,000 unread emails on my phone. I was just showing Liz, I'm rather embarrassed. So this is a first for me. I've never done a silent disco, so great to see you all. I was rather hoping when I saw the headphones that there'd be somebody doing simultaneous translation to actually translate what I'm saying into something that makes sense, but they won't, but I'll try and do my best. So, here we go, conversational marketing. So first of all, who's LivePerson? We've been around for 25 years. We're the company that invented web chat. So if you've ever been on a website and a window popped up and said, "Can I help you?" it's us. Sorry if it's annoying, but 25 years ago, it was really cool. It was really clever. It was the only way that you could have a digital conversation with a brand, with humans talking to humans without picking up the phone. The good news is that things have moved on since then. So I'll talk a little bit about how the world has changed and how we're moving all of those conversations into mobile messaging. So first of all, conversational commerce. There's a lot of people using this phrase. Our definition is it's the ability for any consumer to have a conversation with any brand using the mobile device or browser of their choice, and actually then using the messaging app of their choice. They might want to use Facebook Messenger, they might want to use Android messages through the RCS business messaging, they might want to use iMessage. So it's the ability for them to have a conversation with a brand in a secure and trusted way using whatever's already on their phone. Of course, when you do that, it's really popular, and so you need some sort of automation at the back end, because otherwise all you're going to do is upset people because they're not going to get responses. And as I'll get into it a little bit later on, it's a real combination of mixing up the humans and the bots at the back end. So what's really brought it to life in the last 18 months is that all of the big messaging companies have decided they want to be the platform that connects consumers to brands. and they have to have some sort of back-end platform at the other end, which is where we come in. So when we first started doing messaging, our first customer was T-Mobile in the USA, and we put messaging into their app. And we put message us next to the call us button, and within 3 weeks everybody was hitting message, and we thought, oh, we're onto something here. So we then put it into as many apps as we could. So most of the banks, most of the telcos. In the UK, I think 3 of the 4 main banks now use us to message from within their app, most of the telcos. And then about a year and a half ago, Apple sidled up to us and said, we want to connect iMessage to businesses. Will you help us? And as it was Apple, we said yes. So we were their launch partner 18 months ago for this thing called Apple Business Chat, which is the ability to just use iMessage on your phone to have a conversation with a brand, and we just work out the magic to connect that behind. About the same time, Google sidled up to us and said, we're really keen to get RCS business messaging off the ground and really get that moving. Will you work with us? So we started working with them. We started working with the major operators like Vodafone, and Liz will tell you about that. And of course, that then prompted Facebook to go, this thing called WhatsApp that we bought that doesn't have a monetization model, let's do some business messaging in WhatsApp. So we were then WhatsApp's launch partner as well. So we now have lots of brands around the world now using mobile messaging to communicate backwards and forwards with their consumers as an alternative to web chat, which is the same as picking up the phone. You know, nobody wants to give up 40 minutes to have either a chat conversation or a phone conversation. They want to be able to message and then go about their day, get their response backwards and forwards, and just in the natural way that they do with their friends and family. So what does this mean for this audience of marketing and sales? When we started, it was all about customer care. It was, there's a problem with my broadband, can you fix it? The advent of putting messaging onto every single handset means that the use cases have expanded right the way from initial engagement through to customer care. So now, in this wonderful post-GDPR world where you can't spam people and get their attention, you can now invite them to have a conversation with you, and I'll get onto that in a second. So you can use messaging to have your initial engagement with your consumer as a brand. And it's the marketer's dream. It's that sort of one-to-one personalized conversation with millions of people. If you do it right, with the right sort of automation behind it, you can have a personal relationship with each of your consumers. Something that a lot of brands that would never have touched their consumers would ever dreamt of before. It was always through the retailer. So as you can see from this slide, it's the whole way through from doing your initial sort of engagement. As Paul said, if you have a messaging conversation with a consumer, you're a huge amount of times, I didn't actually note the number of times, more likely to actually convert that conversation into a transaction. So how does it work? Well, the starting point is start with all of your horrible one-way outbound SMSs and make them conversational. So I'm hoping that the video is, no, okay, never mind. It's supposed to be automated and it will then scroll on. So the one on the left is your sort of standard outbound, do not reply sort of message. So it says your flight's been changed, and if you want to do anything about it, you can't reply, you have to call. And that's the worst thing you can do, is to drive people back to the telephone when you've addressed them with a digital message. The one on the right is actually rich messaging. It should be playing a video. This is the problem with going between Google Slides and PowerPoint. And as you can see from the top, it's fully branded, so you can see that it's the airline that you're talking to, and it would scroll through with all sorts of lovely rich stuff if it was actually working, but hopefully some of the other examples will be better than that. So this is sort of step one in the transformation. Do not send outbound, do not reply messages, because all that will happen is people will phone you. Give them the chance to reply back. Give them a chance to see that the message is trusted, it's branded, it's verified. All of the stuff that Liz will tell you about of how they're verifying their messages and their brands just will show that you'll get a far greater engagement rate. And as you can see, the results speak for themselves. You go from very, very low response rates and very, very low conversion rates to quite dramatic ones. Next step is invite people to have the conversation. So this is one of our brands down in Australia, the Open University. They are now advertising on Facebook, they're advertising on Instagram, and you can either tap or swipe up and start a conversation in WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger or Apple Business Chat or Android messages directly with the university. And again, they've had some quite dramatic results. So, you know, they're getting sort of 40 times lift in engagement, 3 times lifts in conversion, and then a big reduction in the cost per lead as well. So, you know, if you're just out there doing digital advertising, you can turn any one of those advertisements into a click to message rather than a click through to a web page, navigate the web page, fill in a form. You can keep the whole conversation going just in the messaging channel. And then finally, this is something that I think we'll see spreading out. It's a very clever feature that Apple have just built into the iPhone. So when you go to dial the number of a brand that you want to talk to, Apple recognizes that that brand is actually set up to message with you. And as you go to hit the call button, and this is Burberry who are live, do try it out. They love getting people messaging them. If you could all do it at once and overwhelm them, that'll really cheer them up. They really like it when we speak at conferences and everybody starts messaging them. But so you've done your search, you've discovered the telephone number for Burberry, you think, oh, I'll give them a call. You hit the button and it says, why wouldn't you like to message them instead? This is all in iMessage, so there's no app on the phone. The whole conversation becomes branded in iMessage. It's verified. Very similar experience with Android messages on RCS, with RCS Business Messaging, and it just sort of starts the whole conversation. And then my favorite one is this last one. This is one of our customers in the USA. It's a very high-end shoe company called Tamara Mellon. Tamara was the original chief executive of Jimmy Choo. She then set up her own shoe brand, and the shoes start at about $600 each. And what they've done is that they've created this mobile closet, as they call it. They have one pair of every shoe in every size. They go and park outside the high-end shopping centres in the States. The guests come in, they try the shoe on. They can't actually buy anything, but on the bottom of every shoe is a QR code. And they point the phone camera at the QR code, and it immediately starts a messaging conversation with one of the advisors of Tamara Mellon. And you can then also build up your shopping list of the shoes that you tried on in the mobile truck. And because there's Apple Pay built in, you can swipe and buy $3,000 or $4,000 worth of shoes. It parked up near our New York office, and some of the team went out to go and make a little video. And they were astounded. There was a queue of people outside spending $3,000 or $4,000 in messaging, buying shoes from a truck. It rather beats the fish and chip van on a Friday night. If they still exist, I might just be a bit old for that. So, that really shows that you can connect the physical world. You could put a QR code on a poster on a bus stop and start a conversation with somebody waiting for a bus. It won't be long before we use augmented reality, and you just point your phone camera at a bottle of shampoo and it starts the conversation with the shampoo manufacturer. Normally, that shampoo manufacturer would never have wanted to have a conversation or a direct connection with their consumer because it would have been too expensive. But once you've started the conversation, it's on the phone. You then have them opted in. Good old GDPR again. You can then continue the conversation. Maybe 3 weeks later, ask them a question about, did we resolve the issue? Send them a voucher for something else that you're about to launch. Really create that value going backwards and forwards. And as I said, what you really need to do is to make sure you have a blend of automation and human beings. Never, ever, ever put a bot out on its own, because somebody will find the unhappy path, they will have a horrible time, and they will blog about you and say nasty things. It's much, much better to always have human beings connected to the system as well. Manage the bots like human agents. If they're rubbish, get rid of them. If they need training, train them. But always have monitoring going on in the background. As soon as a conversation starts going wrong, elevate it to a human. There are some conversations that need humans. If you're in financial services and selling a product, you have to have somebody who's authorized and able to conduct business, so you have to move to a human. But you don't need a human to do a change of address or a password reset. Just get the bot to do that. And finally, in summary, these are all the good reasons why you should be doing messaging. Particularly for this audience, it's the uplift of 3 times in return on advertising spend, the huge increase in sales conversion, and then the decreases in costs. And perhaps one of the best things about it is you do end up with happier advisors on the end of the phone. Could you imagine what it would be like in a call center, in a voice contact center, having to put your hand up to go to the bathroom, being measured by the minute? When you're doing messaging, you sit in a group, you can chat with your colleagues. If you see something you haven't seen before, you can say, hey, have you seen this? And they can help reply. It just takes the pressure off, and you can actually make sure you get that first contact resolution done first time. So that's the high-speed tour. I shall now hand back over to Tim.
Thank you very much, Alan. Cheers.
Before I go, we are having, if you're an agency and you want to learn lots about this, there's a card on your chair. We're having an event in London where we'll have lots of speakers. Do come along and we'll tell you all about it. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so finally, I want to mention to welcome Liz McCord. She's the Principal Product Manager of Vodafone. She's going to talk a little bit about RCS, which is one of the, it's just the next generation SMS. It's rich messaging brought to you by operators. Off you go.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Brilliant. Thank you very much, Tim. I would like to just say that the LivePerson events are probably one of the best events you can go to the industry, so you'll be looked after if you attend. So I do recommend you to scan that 2D barcode on your seat. Great fun. Anyway, so hello everyone. As Tim has kindly introduced me, I am Liz McCord. I work in Vodafone Group. We're the second biggest operator in the world. We're 10th biggest British company. You all know who we are, which is great. Sometimes I go to places where they've never heard of us. What does that mean? It means we've had a lot of money to invest in some really exciting new technology that will enable interactions between you and our Vodafone mobile subscribers. I need to tell you that it's an industry standard. This is not just a Vodafone show. This is a cross-operator initiative. All of the Japanese operators have launched. The US has just announced a launch last week. We were in LA talking about that a couple of weeks ago. And in the UK, Google has just completed the market with the guest offer that they have. So this is an operator and Google show because Google is coming in to fill the gaps for smaller operators who haven't invested and the ones who aren't there yet. It's been an old initiative, I would say. It's been an evolution over time of messaging. You all use SMS, whether you like it or not very sexy, but it's right in the native messaging application of your phone. No login. No installation, it's just there and it just works. And I work for the consumer department of Vodafone. I don't work for enterprise. I'm not interested in ads. But what I am interested in is making sure that my Vodafone mobile customers have the best proper experience with the brands that they want to interact with. So it's available in all these markets now. If any of you are operating in these countries, not just the UK, I'm going to stand out of the way of the slide, then please approach us. I have Dorina in the audience as well. We're here to sell. So if you want to do some live campaigns, come and talk to us. We'll show you how to do it, and you can be one of the first to get this available at scale. So what have we been doing? Well, just on the Friday before Christmas, I was getting ready to go home. Exhausting end of year activity. And I got a little message on my phone from Pizza Hut. If you have a look on the left, that's the traditional experience that I get when in my flat in Bristol. I tend to get regularly from Domino's. Pizza Hut gave me a much better experience that Friday. We have a Pizza Hut logo going straight into the handset of the customer. We have a visual set of rich cards that can invite the customer to redeem a voucher. And it can all be done via buttons. You don't have to text. You don't have to follow a web link. You just press a button. And I don't know about you, but at the end of the year, on a Friday night before Christmas, the easiness is what it's all about. We've also enabled our customer services in Vodafone in Italy. So you can reach out to Vodafone using your native messaging application. Toby is the person who looks after your needs. I love the fact that it's a male name. Aren't you fed up with hearing a woman assistant everywhere you go? Not with Vodafone. We have a lovely Toby guy who helps with your problems. We've done other campaigns in our UK, German, Spanish and Italian markets, Greece and Turkey as well. Dorina's going to point out my holes. We do all sorts of things. So we go from promoting TV ads, Vodafone TV propositions, to sending you a joke every Monday morning in Vodafone Germany. That's kind of the time of the week that you need it. It probably only could work in Germany, but it does. And we've got some fantastic conversion rates. So what I want to tell you is that this is a proven channel. It is so much more engaging, as Paul, as Alan have talked about, than any other channel. On the left-hand side there, sorry, I'm finding it difficult to see the screen here, but we ran a campaign with McDonald's in South Africa. The CMO, it's not MO, probably CCO, was ecstatic with the results, and we are now extending that to all of the campaigns. We had a 3% redemption rate. 3% of people who received that voucher, that promotion, actually redeemed the voucher. Now, you guys know better than I do, being in the industry, how successful that is. Why? because it's verified by Vodafone, because you have the logo, because it's secure, it's safe, it's arriving into the native messaging application, the one that you have on your phone, even if you don't want it. I love this anecdote. We were promoting Vodafone vouchers every Friday in Italy using the Vodafone application. And we put a Vodafone application on every Vodafone sold device so that you can manage your account, you can do stuff, you can ask Vodafone. I was working with the Italian team. We ran a single campaign in Italy, and they don't use the app anymore because it was so effective. It was 11 times more engaging than the application, because you know what it's like. As we heard from Paul earlier, nobody really wants to use apps anymore. I switch all my notifications off. We know that the actual statistic of that is 85% of people switch off their notifications, not their messages, because we still are in a position to be able to offer a user a secure channel to message other people and the brands that they want to interact with. We don't sell customers data. We simply enable a way for customers to communicate with the people they choose. And then some other stats that you will be interested in. So on the left-hand side here, ITV, 50. So we ran a competition, or two competitions actually, in July, August time, I think it was, wasn't it? And it's really just to enter competitions. You see them on this morning on all the daytime TVs. And we only ran maybe 10% of the consumers with RCS, 90% were using SMS. And despite that proportion, 58% of them, but 58% of the entries came from RCS. So proven success. Isn't it lovely? You can just press a button because ITV knows you. We have enabled in Italy every single charitable donation. You get an RCS message because we love doing stuff with charities. Very important to us. And we found that the engagement following the donation was so much higher with RCS. I'm looking at the 21% for a specific campaign versus 3%. One of the problems charities have is that people donate once, but then they don't come back. So they want to build a relationship with the donator so that there is a persistent revenue coming in to fund them. RCS helps do that. And then, of course, we're promoting our own services again, as you've seen. So why try RCS? Because it's a reality now. You can get it on Vodafone and other operators today. Please come and talk to us. Talk to LivePerson, talk to Sinch. It's reliable and it's trusted. We do not let any spam into our network. Every brand is personally verified by Vodafone. We ensure that relationship is there. It's an industry standard, so we're evolving. We're doing these campaigns, we're trying. We've done over 100 campaigns so far, and we're learning from the experience. So what we are really seeking to do is make sure that it responds to your needs, because you guys know your consumers. You will build a really good experience for them, and we obviously want to make sure they are very happy. So come and try it. Do a trial, do a couple of trials, and you will see the results for yourself. Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks, Liz. So I've got a short amount of time for some questions. So we'll get into the big stuff. Alan, I want to come to you first. So obviously it's very persuasive what you've said, and there are multiple channels available to brands. I'm sure we've got brands and agencies in the audience today. How do you actually manage so many different channels? What's the practical day-to-day implications of having lots of channels and consumers with different choices?
Well, at the risk of doing an enormous plug, you need a platform behind it, and that platform is us, LivePerson. Other platforms are available, I believe. So the whole principle of it is you should be where your consumer is. So if your consumer is on an Android phone, they should be using the native messaging on there, which is RCS, because it's just there, as Liz said. Whether you want it there or not, it's there, it's the easy thing. Equally, in some markets, WhatsApp is the most popular one. You should just let people be able to do it. And there is a subtle difference between each of them and each of the way that they work. I mean, Apple, for example, will only let you launch as long as you have human beings behind it as well. You can have some bots, but you must have a human being, and they vet you completely, and unless you can do that, sorry, you don't get the Apple verification and you can't do it. So, yeah, I think, the trick is to look where your consumers are, look what you want to achieve, look at the level of richness you want to build in, because, WhatsApp at the moment is just pictures and words. With RCS, it's like having an app on the phone, but without having to install one. Look to see what you want to do, and then just pick 1 or 2 channels to get started, test and learn, and then build up from there.
So does that mean that it's not practical to do them all in one go?
If you're ambitious, you can. We do have some customers that are very ambitious and launch the lot in one go. It's really about operational, because it's a very different thing going from voice to messaging. So voice to chat is the same. It's one person talking to one person. With messaging, you can have 10 customers talking to one agent at once, because it's asynchronous. Somebody sends a message in the morning before they go to work saying, my broadband's broken. You get a message back saying, we'll check that, we'll get back to you in 20 minutes. They go off, they disappear. Then they come back in 20 minutes' time to get the result. So it's more about the operational management. To be honest, it doesn't really matter what the end point is, because to the advisor on the other end, it all looks the same.
And what about the fees? Because let's say you decide iMessage and Facebook Messenger work for you in your particular region, and then they come to you and you have a nice back end and a dashboard that makes it all easy, I'm imagining. What about fees for these different channels? Do you have to deal? Can you deal through you? Do you have to deal with them directly?
We could be all day here on this one, but no, the simple thing is we have a relationship with all of them. So yes, you can just deal through us. Exactly the same as Paul at Sinch as well, that we're all acting like a little bit like the SMS aggregators used to. So we're the ones that can connect you to whatever messaging backend you want to use.
And so while we're on business models, I'll come to Paul. Some of you guys in the audience may have used traditional notifications, one-way outbound notifications, and this is Sinch's bread and butter. But you're obviously, when you're dealing in a commerce scenario and there's multiple messages going back and forward, you need new ideas for charging. Can you give us an idea what kind of options are available?
So without wanting to answer the question on top of the operators, I think there's certainly where I've seen the momentum in terms of charging is trying to get to a point where the consumer is charged really for a session charging. So maybe it could be a time frame, 24 hours, where they could have an ongoing conversation with the brand that will be charged as one session. It could be done in terms of usage. I think it's still a little bit immature in terms of charging, but I think the challenge and the opportunity is to make it fair for both parties. And I would just echo what Alan said in terms of the ability to have a platform that allows you to really select channels to deliver these conversations. It may be that you continue to do a lot of the conversations right to two-way SMSs, because that's what but you want to be inquisitive to try WhatsApp or to try RCS. The ability to do that and have that integrated into your marketing automation platform, be it Salesforce or Adobe or Oracle, is key. And I think it doesn't negate the expectation of platforms to be automated, but it gives you the choice on what and how you deliver it.
And Alan, back to you. Can you use SMS for this?
Oh yes, yep.
Do your clients use SMS?
And they do an awful lot. Yes. Yep.
And does that is that an issue in terms of charging because of
Not really. Because obviously we're under the SMS model, the consumer doesn't pay. So, and if you get the value of the conversation, it's still at least half the cost of doing a voice call. So the brands really don't worry so much about a few SMS messages that, and there's such good value through companies like Sinch that we don't have to worry.
If you think about marketing now, it's still very email driven. The vast majority of marketing is still being done by email. So even SMS is seen as a slight innovation, even though we may think it's relatively old hat. It's still being used in innovative ways, and so this is just the extension of that. And as I said in my presentation, this whole industry is relatively niche in terms of its potential, and it's really up to you guys and girls to really understand how it can be exploited.
So Liz, coming on to RCS, I just to ask the audience, put your hands up how many people have heard of RCS before today's presentation. So I'd say about 3/4, 2/3 maybe.
Wow.
That's pretty good.
That's exciting.
Pretty good. So Liz, obviously the thing about RCS is you talk very persuasively about it's the default. It's just there. You don't need installation. But clearly it needs to be on all operators. Yeah. So I know you can't speak for the whole world's operators. Maybe you can. I don't know. But what's your sense of the progress that's being made in terms of rolling it out everywhere?
So to be honest, I think it's really taking off now. There is a huge increase in interest. We were at Mobile World Congress in LA, and I think it's fair to say that it was extraordinary, the activity from all of the major operator groups in the world. Orange are launching, Telefonica are launching, all of the American operators are launching. It's all over Japan, South America. It's coming. It really is coming. South Africa, they're about to go national wide there as well. So we're really seeing an incredible ramp up. We've had it live since 2012. We haven't published it because we just offer it to consumers, and we can't really tell people, well, you can talk to another Vodafone user, with this great messaging channel. So, it's not really spoken about until the penetration is near 100%. So it is really coming. I think you will start to hear about it. I get lots of news articles now on my phone talking about RCS. I think the awareness is there, and it's coming.
Do you think it needs to be marketed generically by the operators, or will people just discover it? They'll go to their default SMS and find out they can do more with it, and it will just organically grow? Or?
I mean, it is akin to iMessage in that sense, is that people are there. Again, I work for consumer. If consumers want to use WhatsApp, please carry on using it. That's wonderful. We're just offering a secure channel that is available for our customers. They are still there. WhatsApp I remember it was so funny. We had Dorina will remember this. WhatsApp went down about a year ago for a couple of days, and our RCS usage just went. We were like, oh, what's happened? Something's happening. Oh, WhatsApp's down. Right. People are still there because you trust it. I mean, I know it's not perfect. I'm not trying to tell you that the native operator messaging is the best in the world, but with RCS, it's comparable to the other messaging apps that are out there, and that's all we're trying to do, is give a decent service to our customers who haven't seen an improvement since 1985.
And I would echo that in terms of what we see. Coming from a traditional SMS aggregation business, I truly believe this is a game changer for us. It really takes, an SMS, which is a legacy product that has been sweated to death for as long as we can, into a completely new dimension. So, this will be pervasive across the market, and will become, I think, over time, the de facto way of people communicating. So, absolutely.
And just to add one point, I think that the diversity of the ecosystem is going to be one of its long-term strengths, because it's not just one company. I've been speaking to lots of people, and these companies, I don't want to cite any names, but they're fantastic. But there's a single entry point, there's a single control point. And what happens if that company becomes political or starts doing things that you're not happy with? You're tied into this company. This is an ecosystem. This is not a Vodafone thing. This is equally an O2, an EE, a Google Play. So I think that's actually our strength. It's very, that's the sort of inherent strength of the internet, isn't it? The sort of interoperability. This is what we have on a native messaging app.
Yeah, and I think with RCS, one of the big driving points is the fact that it is an outbound platform. Apple Business Chat isn't. You cannot send a message from a brand to a consumer using Apple Business Chat. The consumer has to start. So if you have got an opted-in base, you can send rich messages to those opted-in customers. And quite soon, people are going to get an SMS and look at it and go, because they'll be so used to getting rich messages on their Android devices.
So to take that a little bit further, that brings into the whole the conversation the idea about spam, and when to message somebody, how often, how frequently to message them, how to make them realise that this is a genuine message and not a scammer. So Liz, again, you alluded to this. What can you tell us a little bit more about your verification scheme and how you guard against some of these abuses?
Absolutely. So this is still early days, and we're verifying every single campaign on a campaign-by-campaign basis, because the moment we get a customer complaint, is the moment that we would be very upset. Again, we don't work for enterprise department, we work for a consumer department. So we're finding that the companies that are interested are the ones that are delivering a fantastic user experience. So as I mentioned, Virgin Trains, McDonald's and Disney, they're promoting really lovely stuff. We were zero rating the data in South Africa for that, so that obviously takes away the pain. The consumer doesn't see any charge at all from Vodafone customer point of view. So we're manually verifying. Of course, that's going to grow. That's not scalable. But again, we're looking for value for our consumers, not volume at this stage. So it works for now.
And Alan, how do you advise your clients to approach the frequency of messaging and the length of a conversational commerce dialogue?
Well, it's whenever is relevant for the consumer. So it's all about consumer relevance. If they've started the conversation, you keep it going until that's resolved. If you've started the conversation as part of an outbound campaign, just base it on the responses. So just use common sense, don't overdo it. And if the consumer has enough of the conversation, all they have to do to opt out is just delete it from the messaging stream and it's gone. However, if they don't delete it, it's on their phone forever and the connection is open forever. So the conversation never stops.
I just want to make a remark. We have internally within Vodafone, of course, many people working on messaging. LivePerson have done a fantastic campaign with Burberry. One of our finance guys, who's been sponsoring RCS, by the way, for the last few years, ran up to me the other day and said, "I can't believe it. I've been looking for this Burberry coat and I just ordered it online with my messaging app. And I've booked the appointment in Oxford Street to go and pick it up. It's brilliant, this messaging. It's the future, isn't it?" So you actually, when you live it, you can really understand how wonderful it is.
And just think about how you do it as a consumer and how you interact with your friends, family around these messaging apps now. So just think of that in a business context, because you're still having that, as Alan said, that relevant conversation. And when you're happy with that chat, you disengage with it. Same thing from a business engagement. So don't think it's any different than you would have in a consumer world. You're just taking it to a different audience.
It's interesting, Alan, you're talking about Tomorrow Melon with the barcodes, because I'm sure everyone in this room knows about Rory Sutherland. He's like a very charismatic marketing person. And I remember hearing him talk a few years ago about how brands neglect existing customers because they're always looking for new customers. And he talked about the fact that he always wears the same shoes. And what he would really like is a barcode on the bottom of his shoe so that he can just, when it's worn out, he can reorder it. So I don't know if this kind of is improving the way that brands can keep relationships going with existing customers rather than always looking for new ones.
It is, and it's just a fantastic way of connecting the physical world to the virtual world. People aren't all, I know most people are looking at their phones and browsing the whole time, but they are out in the physical world. They are looking at bus stops, they are looking at products. So yeah, use it as a way of connecting.
Well, I've had one of these from the back of the room. So thank you very much for listening. I'm sure all our speakers will be available to have a chat with you afterwards. So enjoy the rest of the show, and thanks very much. Goodbye.